is Mrs. Mila, and I have a couple of very short stories to tell you that I got from my Spooky Stories collection in the Acton HighRock Book Shed. And actually, the fun thing about this is, when I was a little kid, I found this at the used bookstore, and I had this book when I was a little kid. It isn't this exact one, but it brought back really good memories. I really like it. So, it's 13 Ghostly Tales, edited by Freya Littledale. And I'm going to read two. They're very short. And the first one is called The Railroad Ghost by Murray T. Pringle. Be prepared to be scared. It was a spooky night. As the cracked British Express train raced through the chilly darkness, fog began to close in around it. It was just the sort of night anything could happen, a night one might even expect to meet a ghost. Now, running a train isn't easy anytime, but on this particular evening, it was really hard work. Fog pressed in on the speeding train from all sides, like thick folds of velvet. Even with the powerful headlights stabbing the darkness ahead, the engineer had to strain his eyes to see the track. He was very much annoyed at the fog, because today of all days he wanted to make a record run. And the reason was that Queen Victoria herself was among the several hundred passengers on the train. Suddenly, a horrified gasp escaped his lips. Dead ahead, and outlined in the brilliant beam of the engine's headlamp, a figure in a black cloak stood in the middle of the tracks, waving its arms frantically. The engineer made a desperate grab for the brakes and brought the express to a screeching halt. After quieting the excited and frightened passengers, the train man got out to investigate. They searched and called, but there was no sign of the mysterious figure who had flagged their train. Ooh, who could it be? Who had he been, and why had he stopped the train? The crewmen were puzzled. They decided someone had been playing a joke. Even the engineer was almost convinced that it had either been somebody's poor idea of a joke or his imagination playing tricks. But he wasn't absolutely sure. Just to make certain, he swung down from his cab and walked up the tracks. Suddenly, his face grew pale and his heart beat wildly. There, a scant 200 yards ahead of the stopped train, he found a washed-out bridge. The whole thing had toppled into a swollen stream. If it had not been for the mysterious flagman, the train would have plunged into the stream, killing passengers and crew. While the bridge and tracks were being repaired, the train crew made another search, but they could not find the slightest trace of the strange figure who had saved the train. Not until the train reached London safely was the mystery solved. Lying at the base of the locomotive headlamp, the engineer found a huge dead moth. Most people would have brushed the insect off and thought no more about it, but the engineer held the insect in his hand and frowned thoughtfully. Then he did a strange thing. He wet the wings of the moth and carefully pasted it to the glass of the headlamp. Then he climbed back into the cab of his engine and switched on the light. "Ah!" he cried triumphantly. "I thought so." For as the bright beam stabbed ahead into the darkness, there appeared once again the phantom the engineer had seen earlier. But now the arms weren't waving wildly. They were still. The mysterious rescuer had been this huge moth. Somehow, in the few seconds before the train reached the wrecked bridge, it had flown into the beam of the headlight. And because in the dense fog the trapped insect had resembled a cloaked figure waving its arms, many people, including the Queen of England herself, had been saved. Did this really happen? Well, if you're ever in London, go to the Museum of Natural History and ask to see the Victoria moth. You will be shown a huge moth in a glass case. The moth the British call the Phantom Flagman. Ooh, it's a good one. Now, this one's really short, so pay attention. The Ghost with One Sock, retold by Freya Littledale. Once there was a man who died with only one sock on. After the funeral, he kept coming back to his old house. Every night he came back at the stroke of midnight. His wife was so scared she moved from that place, but he found her. So his wife moved again. She kept on moving, and he kept on coming back. One day she couldn't stand moving anymore, so that night she asked him, "What is it that you want? Why do you keep haunting me?" "Please," he said, "could I have my other sock?" So she gave him the other sock, and to this day, he has never been seen again. How many of you have lost a sock after the wash? Yep, Mr. Joe's over there waving his hand. Now he's shaking his head. They go to a special place, we don't know where. Anyway, happy Halloween Eve, and I hope to hear again. I'm reading another story tomorrow for you, and I hope you have a good time. If I don't see you, go trick-or-treating, be very safe, be with your parents, be with friends, be with older people, and enjoy yourself. Happy Halloween.